Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Gaines for Girls podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Again, be sure to check us out at OutKick.com. See all things Gaines for Girls. Make sure to check out my new special on Fox Nation called Transfixed. We had Prisha Mosley on a few weeks ago talking about her experience as a child who began to transition and then detransition and then getting pregnant as a detransitioner, delivering a beautiful baby boy. Really, really heartbreaking, but powerful stuff. So be sure to check that out. Today's guest on the topic of the gender ideology movement, this is a warrior who we're talking to today. She is the embodiment of leadership. She is the embodiment of courage. Her name is Representative Shawn Thierry. She is a state representative in Texas. You might have seen her on a video recently. She was at the Moms for Liberty conference. She was standing up on the stage, and she announced that she was leaving the Democratic Party. That's right, she was a Democrat. She got into it because she believed, she wanted to stand for people to give the vulnerable a voice, but she realized that the left left her because of issues like putting men and women's sports, transing, chemically and surgically castrating minors. All of these things, plus her faith, played a big role in her decision to leave the Democratic Party and join the Republican Party, to which we welcomed her with open arms. And so be sure to check out the interview here with Texas State Representative Shawn Thierry. So first and foremost, Representative Thierry, oh my gosh, I just want to thank you, one, for being a public servant and for so selflessly representing Texans. But would you kind of just briefly share a little bit about yourself and your career as a Texas State Representative and really what caused you to initially get involved?
Yes. Thank you, Riley, for having me. I'm super excited to be here because I'm so proud of you. I'm probably old enough to be your mom, so I'm just so proud of you as a young lady taking the stance that you have to protect women and girls in sports. I am a state rep, as for those who may not know me, I've been in office 7.5 years. I'll be completing almost 8 in January. This will be my last term in office. I represent Houston. And I can just tell you, I really I'm a lawyer by profession. I've been a lawyer over 25 years. I like to say I got my law degree when I was 10. I was a child prodigy. But, got in this really just to be a voice for the voiceless. And when I did that, I thought it would pretty much be, the underserved communities, the elderly, children, and just those who really don't always get the chance to make their voices heard in the legislature. And little did I know that after a few terms that we would be confronted with issues like biological males invading women's spaces, and not just that, taking from them, literally taking from them their right to compete, to take away their rights for things they've worked so hard for. And I tell people, it's not just a game. They're also like, oh, we'll just let them play. No, this is a livelihood for young girls and women. It's their opportunity to have scholarships, to earn a living. And I tell people who are finally kind of waking up that there would be no Serena Williams. There would be no Simone Biles. There would be Martina Navratilova talked about this from, back in the 70s. People understand that if this were allowed back then, some of the women that they champion right now, they wouldn't even know who they are.
Exactly. And you mentioned you have a daughter, an 11-year-old daughter.
Yes. My daughter Claire is surprised that this is even happening. She's run track, kind of just in the summer, not on a team, but she's good. She's fast. But she said that if it ever came down to her having to run against a boy, she wouldn't do that. And that's not anything I told her. She understands the differences.
Exactly.
And so it's just bizarre, Riley, that we're in this world, in this space right now. And I don't know why feminists And all those women that fought so hard for women's rights are turning a blind eye to this and allowing young ladies like yourself to go through what you went through, and women all around the country.
Yeah, it's a sad day when an 11-year-old has a better grasp on biological reality than who is in the White House right now. But a few weeks ago, this video of you went viral. You were at the Moms for Liberty conference, and I just remember watching this video and feeling like this immense sense, this overwhelming sense of just joy listening to you. And so can you describe, of course, the scenario that I'm talking about? I'm sure everyone's seen the video. What that spiel was and really what the tipping point for you looked like.
Sure. Well, it was a long time in the making. Lots of prayer, not because I wasn't sure, but just because of what I had gone through for a year and a half. So what precipitated all of this was, for those who don't know, last session, this current session, we're in the interim, we were confronted with an issue, a bill, as to whether or not, or really what age a child could be to have a sex change surgery, which sounds in and of itself, right, like an oxymoron. We were also confronted with whether biological males should be allowed to play in women's sports at the collegiate level. And I took a stand on both of those issues. And I was surprised and shocked that my colleagues, Democratic House colleagues, wanted to kill both of those bills, which were essentially just providing safeguards for children and girls and young women. The first bill, with respect to the sex change surgeries and the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones, simply said, you just need to be 18. That's it. Who would think that that wouldn't be accepted by everyone in the nation, considering you have to be 18 to even get a tattoo in Texas, 18 to even get a tan in a tanning salon. But instead, my Democrat colleagues said, no, we need to kill that bill. We need to allow children to have these procedures. Parents who are willing to put their children under the knife and allow their daughters who do not have cancer to get double mastectomies at the age of 14 if they want to, 12. We're going to let that happen. And I took a stand. I said, I could never in good conscience do that. And why are you doing it? And then I found out that my colleagues were saying, well, we know it's crazy, but if we don't support it, they'll put somebody in our race in a primary and run against us. And by they, I mean special interest groups. And I said, but y'all, we're here to serve, and we cannot let our children and our girls and young women be used as political pawns. But they wouldn't relent. And so I stood 10 toes down and spoke out. And so I did a 12-minute speech on this mutilation of children, and that went viral. And from that moment on, my life changed, Riley. I'm sure you can relate. When you stand there for something that's righteous, those who are being exposed will come at you with everything they've got because they're embarrassed that you've ripped the lid off of something. And so then after that, I think it was a few days later or maybe a week, I voted to prevent biological males to be in women's sports. And so from that point on, I think I was probably bullied every day for a year and a half. They did exactly what they promised. They did put someone in my race to primary me, raising almost the radical progressives, the left, almost $1 million to take away my state rep seat. So they prevailed. But I always tell people, like, oh, are you doing this because you lost? I said, this is so much bigger than being a state rep. That's nothing compared to, losing a seat versus losing your conscience, losing your soul. So I'm winning. I always say every day I wake up winning. I'm winning with the Lord. I'm winning with moms. I'm winning with children. And I'm winning with myself, knowing that I can sleep at night, that I stood for what's right. I stood for women like you, young ladies like you, who don't deserve for people to cheat them. And so that's where I am. And so then I decided to make a switch because I realized what's going on nationally. When I saw that the Biden-Harris administration was suing to overturn Title IX protections for women and trying to change the trying to change the word protections based on sex to gender, right, which would essentially include men who identify as women. I realized then that I had to get involved and I could never win this battle on the other side, the side that I was in, the Democrat side. People said, well, if you had won your seat, what would you do? Well, I thought at the time that if I did win, that I could continue to keep trying to fight and make change. But now they've doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down. So I could never effectuate change as a Democrat. So I switched parties. I made the announcement at the Moms for Liberty National Summit in Washington, D.C., in front of a room with maybe 1,000 people. And so I assume you watched it remotely. And you're right, it went viral. I would say nationally, but then I had a friend send me a copy of the India Times or the Times of India. And they're like, Representative, you're on the cover of the newspaper in India. And I was like, what? So, but people, I'll say by and large, Riley, are grateful. They're sending me wonderful support for taking a bold, courageous stand. And I always tell people, I never wanted to be known for taking a stand for something that really shouldn't require courage. I'll accept it because that's where we are right now. But when did it become courageous to say that a biological man can't have a baby? When did it become courageous to say a biological man isn't 5 to 10 times stronger than a woman?
Wow. Yeah, it is. It's wild that we live in a time where that is brave. It breaks my heart, really, that that's considered brave. But nonetheless, I mean, you, I'm sure, have faced attacks. And I want you to know, too, you expressed how some people, some of your colleagues would share to you maybe in private, we agree with you, but we can't lose our seat or whatever the stipulation was. That's something I hear in every state. I mean, even at the national level, I've had Democrat senators before I testified before the Senate or Congress who would come up to me and said, hey, look, I played sports. I played college sports. I have a daughter. I totally agree with you. And then would get on the other side of the table and absolutely grill me. So understand that is something.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is real. And it's got to be called out and stopped. And I think that's why I salute you once again for what you're doing. We need more women. We need men of good conscience to speak out against this. I am with you 100%. I don't even know if you read the article years ago. Serena Williams, obviously a tennis phenom, very fast, very strong, very powerful with her serve. Did an exhibition match with a German player who was probably ranked, if I can recall, I know he was at least like the 80th seed or below. It might have been in the hundredths.
He was right? 203rd.
That's okay. So so 203rd. She's the number one female tennis player in the world, and he beat her every match, every round, smoked her, and said that he wasn't even playing at his full capacity. And she acknowledged that. She said, that's why I play women's tennis. She said, I don't play. She said, they hit the ball differently. She said, it has a different spin on it. She said, I cannot beat them. And she's not trying to. So just that alone proves what we're dealing with. And you would think that people knowing that if Serena Williams, with the power and the talent that she has, couldn't beat somebody who was 200th in his own category. Why is this happening?
I want to hear about your faith. You mentioned prayer. Was this something that impacted your role as a state rep? And again, ultimately the decision to leave the Democratic Party.
It did. I've always been a woman of faith. I've always been a Christian. I was christened initially Catholic. And then my mom became Baptist. My dad was Catholic, so I started going to Baptist church with her. But I really started to realize, Riley, this is a faith walk for all of us. We have to take that leap of faith and step out there when you have to really wage a war almost against what's unjust. And so the righteous will be persecuted. And I know that. I mean, scripture tells us that. So I pray and pray all the time for God to continue to order my footsteps. And everyone knows this is wrong. Everyone knows it's wrong. And so now I do have such a sense of peace has come over me since I've made the switch. I don't wake up with anxiety or fear or trepidation. That's not of God. You know, all that came from being in a being around in a negative space, negative people, negative spirits, all of that. And so I have so much peace now. And I'm so happy to do this work. And I'm not tired. And I was reading some scripture last night, and because someone said, well, what theory, you know, how do you keep going? You know, what makes you keep going? You know, you're not going to have a receipt after January. And I read the scripture that says, do not get weary in well-doing. And so I'm just a woman. I am just a mom, but I use that and lean on that to keep me motivated. And faith without works is dead. We hear that too. So you can't just be faithful. You actually have to move and do something. And so that's what you're doing. And that's what the young ladies, the ambassadors that work with you, that's what millions of moms are doing around the country, millions of women and men. And I think that we just are going to have to continue to amplify our voices.
Really powerful. Your experience, it reminds me a lot of a representative in Kansas, actually. His name is Marvin Robinson. And it was, I mean, very similar, where the women's sports bill came up. They had tried for 3 sessions. They couldn't get it through. The way their legislative body is broken up, I mean, they needed every single Republican to vote in favor to override the governor's veto. 2 Republicans, 1 Republican actually, I think it was 2 Republicans decided that they weren't going to vote for women's sports. And 1 lone Democrat by the name of Marvin Robinson, he stood firm. He said, this is crazy. He was a black man. He was, I mean, the most gracious, kind person you could possibly imagine. But for taking that stand, and then thereafter on other bills like you're describing with yourself, the Democratic Party, I mean, they ousted him. They called for him to step down. They had, you know, advocacy groups getting involved and threatening him. They removed him from his office. I mean, they literally took out his stationary things. They took away his office. He didn't have an office in the Capitol anymore. I mean, really crazy stuff. And I think back to when I was present at the ceremonial signing in Texas for the Save Women's Sports Act. And I remember the vitriol that I was met with by community members and different things. I mean, we were...
And these are supposed to be the people who are tolerant, right?
Isn't that hilarious? They say they're tolerant and they say they're accepting and welcoming and they embrace diversity. Well, guess what? They did not embrace my diverse thought. They chanted for hours. They said racist, sexist, anti-trans, you have blood on your hands for hours. And so I can only imagine, you know, you touched on it a little bit, but some of what you faced, whether it's from your colleagues, you know, maybe some of your constituents, but has the support that you've received, especially since taking that, you know, that national stand now, being with Moms for Liberty, really making this public, switching. I saw you on Fox News. I mean, really great stuff. Has the support that you've received outweighed some of the negative?
It has. It really has. But I can say this, if I didn't have my faith and my family, I can see how what they do and how violent and harmful they are, how it could destroy a person. I was sent just like you, this whole thing about blood on your hands. They sent me bloody memes of like hands with blood on them. They put together some kind of little campaign on Mother's Day last year. They gave out my phone number and asked hundreds of them to text me that they hope that I die on Mother's Day, that they hope that my daughter would wake up an orphan. I'm really sick stuff. So I can see for those who really could get, you know, shook by that, would be afraid. I stood against it. I kept going. And I told them, I said, I may lose my seat. You will not make me lose my mind. I'm not going to lose my conscience. You can censor me, as I said, but I will not be silenced. And that's what this is about, Riley. It is about silencing you, silencing me, silencing the gentleman you talked about, the other state rep. It is horrible to try to say that here, the Democrat, you could have voted on almost everything else they supported, and it's not enough. That's when I said, and I'll go on record to say this today, I don't care if they think it's radical, what they're doing is radical. I agreed to be in the Democratic caucus, not the Democratic cult. And that's what it becomes when you have to drink every ounce of Kool-Aid to stay a part of something, and you can't differ on any level without being blasted, lambasted, ousted, then you're in a cult. That's what it is. When people, like you said, physically try to remove him out of his office, maligned, attacked, doing everything they can to destroy someone's life, their legacy, that's what cultists do. And so that's why I said, yes, it has been worth it, because I didn't know. And that's why I said, I'll go back to my faith. What people take away, what man tries to take away, God will replenish, 10,000-fold in this situation. I was welcomed by Governor Abbott, all of my House colleagues, the Speaker, millions of people around the country said, bravo, we welcome you, thank you. And here's the part, quietly, lots of Democrats, inbox and say, thank you, please. They say, some of them say, I live in California and I feel alone. They said, I've taken a stance on this issue. They have daughters that play soccer. And they said, one lady said she's a teacher. And she said, I will get fired, I believe, from my job if I speak out. And her own child is on a soccer team.
Crazy. I want to ask you about Black American voters, because, generally this is a demographic, or at least they count on it being a demographic that supports the culturally progressive policies that are being implemented, like men and women's sports or like the transing of minors. But are you seeing a shift? I feel like, based off what I've seen in social media, based on conversations that I've had, talking to Uber drivers, talking to people in the grocery store, I can see a shift. But is that something that you feel like is accurate to say?
Yes, it's not large enough because the mainstream media and the Democratic Party is doing such a good job of hiding the truth from Black America, from Black voters, that those that know agree and support. But it's almost like an underground movement because they're doing this so surreptitiously that Black voters don't know that this is happening. I tried to talk about it in my campaign, but they outraced me, and they sent out so many flyers and mailers and TV ads and radio ads deflecting from the issue. So they use racism to fearmonger Black voters and say, well, if you support this party, you don't support us, we're going to go back to slavery. I mean, just crazy talk to put fear. But yes, Black America is waking up. And I always say when I'm out speaking, I don't know what it's going to take, but let's say someone, and I sometimes when I mention athletes, I want them to know I'm not asking them to take a position, but look at someone like Angel Reese from LSU. Do they think that if a white biological male who claimed he was a girl came on another team and started playing, for example, against Iowa and took that trophy, that championship trophy from Angel Reese, what would Black America do? Would it take that to say, wait a minute, what the hell just happened here?
Right.
What just happened here? And then for the others, white Americans who maybe say, well, this is horrible, but I'm not saying anything. Does it take a 6'10" man to knock Caitlin Clark on the ground and break her neck? Like, what does it take?
Right.
And so I think what's happening is they don't see how real this is. They think they're random incidents. And so unfortunately, It may take something like that. But again, there would be no Angel Reese. There would be no Caitlin Clark if every biological male just said, we're just going to go get on and play on that team.
Right. Right. Now you've endorsed Trump. I watched it live on TV. It was incredible. And so I wanted to ask you, as a former Democrat, what is some advice that you would give President Trump and his team, his campaign, to help win over independents or moderates or even some who are registered Democrat?
Well, I hope it's not above my pay grade. Let me say that first to President Trump and his team, because I know they are working so hard to save America. But what I think can happen is they have got to hold Kamala Harris and the Waltz campaign's feet to the fire on this issue. And it probably, what we witnessed in the debate the other night, he did his best. I don't think it can be done in a debate forum because they're unfair. As we saw, it's 3 against 1. They're not going to allow him to speak on it. He tries and they come back and they gaslight and they say things aren't happening that are really happening. They don't give him opportunity to really speak. But I do believe if the campaign can do its own thing, get out and do press conferences with all of us surrounding them to call out, for example, even with the child sex changes, her running mate, Tim Walz, made the state of Minnesota a sanctuary state for transgender children, meaning what that means is something very radical. House File 146 is a piece of legislation that he signed into law that allows a child from Texas or any other state to leave the state of Texas against one parent's wishes in a custody battle and go to Minnesota, where they can then start prescribing that child hormones and giving them a sex change. Wow. It gave the state of Minnesota jurisdiction in family custody matters and allows the fact that a parent does not consent to providing what they call gender affirming care, which means if you're a father out there, I'm going to talk to the Black men out there, if you're a Black father out there and you're in a custody battle, Tim Waltz says it's okay for your wife to take the child to Minnesota and take your son and castrate your son. That's what can happen. And people get kind of riled up and say, oh, castrating isn't happening. Do they know what the medical definition of castration is? I mean, if you cut off a child's testicles, that's castration. And so I think that President Trump's team has a real opportunity to expose this issue, because the Harris-Waltz campaign is running from it.
Of course,
they have never publicly admitted to Americans that this is what they support. They cannot get away with calling this health care. They need to be asked directly, do they support girls who do not have cancer getting double mastectomies because they've been told they're born in the wrong body? Would they support a child 14 or 15 being prescribed Lupron, which is a chemical castration drug and a drug we give grown men who have prostate cancer? Do they support giving that to kids who do not have cancer? And the answer is yes, we do. And I think that lets every moderate American and every independent voter know what's at stake here. That Donald Trump is here to protect our kids.
I could not agree more. I'm sending this clip to them and I'm telling them she needs to be on record, because you're right. She knows it's not a winning issue for her party. She knows that it doesn't poll well. And they know what their voting record shows. They know what it tells, but they're trying desperately to run.
They are running from this. They pivot from this with a quickness. Their feet have to be held to the fire. Even my opponent in my primary, who ran against me and said that the reason she ran against me was because she supports these procedures for children. We were in a forum in my community, in my district, and where there was probably the room was 90% Black voters. And someone in the audience asked her on it. They said, well, we just want to know, what's your stance on this issue with sex changes for children and giving them sex hormones when they're underage? She folded like a broken chair. I mean, she fell apart like a suit at the seams. She started stumbling and mumbling and flipping and flopping. And she said, I just don't think that's an important issue. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? It's the issue. You said that's why you were running against me. And so they back away from it. And I don't think that Kamala Harris, they've made this big deal about, yes, she's a Black woman. She went to Howard University and HBCU. I graduated from that school too. So from one Howard woman to another, she needs to be able to look Black America in the face. She said, say it to her face on her campaign. I want her to say it to Black America's faces that she supports procedures which will make Black children infertile and sterile. How is that not a form of population control?
Really?
I'm really in shock that she could, in good conscience, say she would support anything that would stop a Black girl from menstruating, from having the right. That's the real reproductive rights. It's not the right to have an abortion. It's the right for that Black child to have a baby. And I can assure you, if the Republican Party was pushing this, they would be calling this population control and genocide. But because white, progressive, radical liberals are doing it, somehow they're trying to gaslight Black America and make them think this is okay. And I think it's a huge issue. When I really started talking about it at Black churches, they said, oh my Lord, Rep. Thierry, is this real? I said, no one's telling me this. So I think there's a way for the campaign to get it out. As I said, a debate forum will not do it justice. It's got to be talked about on the trail, on the stump, in communities, to fathers and mothers who don't know that this is what the Harris-Walz administration wants to put in place, and that the Biden-Harris administration is already doing it.
You are so wise. I mean, this has given me, I feel like I've been immersed, all encompassed on this issue for 2 years, but this has given me really good insight. So, gosh.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That was long. That was a little rant, but it's just so important. That's
what people need to hear. Gosh, listening to you, it doesn't sound like really you left the left. It sounds like the left left you. And so last question, what's next for you? Anything, any plans, any aspirations?
I don't have political plans for those that are thinking about that. It was never about that. I'm just going to continue to use my platform and my voice to hopefully go around the country and amplify the voices of women like you and me and get women involved from all backgrounds. There are so many more issues where we're united. So if you're a Democrat and you're listening to this and you're like, I didn't sign up for that craziness, come over here and talk to us. If you're a moderate Democrat and you say, or you're an independent and you feel politically homeless, come over here and talk to us where the water's warm and where we are reasonable people that will listen to you and protect your right to be, your female right to be, and your children's right to be. And there are Republican women who some I've heard are kind of on the fence, and don't really know which party is supporting women's rights. I want to go around and tell them that if you're a woman, you cannot vote for the Democrat Party anymore. You really just cannot, because they are erasing women. Putting biological males in women's prisons. Who would think? Women that are trying to repay their debt to society. Now you're putting biological males who were incarcerated in the first place for being sex offenders. Now all they have to do is say, you know what? I identify as a woman. And in the state of New Jersey, they can go to the women's correctional facility, and they've been raping women, sexually assaulting them. So we really are living in dangerous times. And so I just want to go around and amplify the issues because I think people say, do something like your life depends on it. I mean, our kids' lives depend on it. Our women life depends on it. So that's all I'm doing. And I'm going to let God, as I said, order my footsteps. I don't know what he has in store for me, but I know he knows the plans that he's made for me. And so I'm just going to be obedient and faithful and grateful. And so I'm grateful to you. I want to end with that. I'm very grateful that you invited me, and I'm going to stand with you all the way. I'll go wherever you all want to go because we're in this fight together.
That's the truth. Oh my gosh, you're so right. Humanity depends on it. And so, Rep Thierry, I just couldn't be more grateful again for you. You inspire me, inspired so many, but really this is incredibly insightful and just admirable. And so thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Let's keep the faith and keep the fight.
Thank you guys for tuning in to the Gaines for Girls podcast. I think we could all learn a little something about being bold, about leadership, about not abandoning your moral compass, what you know to be true, what is objectively true, from Representative Shawn Thierry. Again, check us out at OutKick.com. Anywhere where you get your podcast, be sure to like and subscribe, share these episodes. I think this episode in particular, share this episode to someone in your life who is a moderate or who is independent or who is undecided on how they want to vote. Let them know what a Kamala Harris, Tim Walz presidency would look like. Really, really powerful stuff. We appreciate you guys, and we will see you guys next week on the Gaines for Girls podcast. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. The fight to save women's sports and restore common sense is far from over, and I continue the conversation every week. So make sure to catch more content over here and subscribe to OutKick so you don't miss a thing.